So ordered.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to take just a few minutes this afternoon to thank my colleagues who have come down to the floor this afternoon and for their efforts to offer what I believe are very substantive, very meaningful amendments to the legislation that is before us. I think we can condense the message that you've heard here this afternoon pretty easily. The fact of the matter is that the bill before us is highly misleading, and I don't believe it will work. The legislation that has been introduced, S2204, is not going to put an end to federal subsidies for oil and gas producers because there are none. There are no subsidies here. The oil and gas industry actually sends money to the federal government to the tune of tens of billions of dollars each year, and it's not the other way around. Basic tax deductions that allow businesses to retain more of their earned dollars is not the equivalent of handing them a check. And so I think that's the first thing that we need to get out on the table and make very clear. And the second point that I just want to reinforce is S2204 is simply not going to work. By definition, increasing costs will not lower prices. There is nothing that I can think of that if we tax it more, it will make it more abundable, more affordable and more abundant. It just doesn't work that way. And judging from both history and some recent international examples, it's virtually certain that S2204 would have damaging effects on this country. Back in 1980, the Carter administration imposed a windfall profits tax. We remember that. This was a tax that was imposed on domestic crude oil. And according to the Congressional Research Service, that tax reduced domestic oil production. It increased our dependence on foreign nations, and it collected far less in revenue than was expected. The example that is more current on an international scene is one that I spoke to yesterday, and this is the example in Great Britain. A year after raising its oil tax rates, production declines in Great Britain have increased from 6% per year to 18% per year. So as a result, Great Britain is reversing that course. They're now planning to offer new incentives to encourage producers to return to the North Sea. So all we need to do is look at a real-time example of what one country did in an effort to deal with high gas prices. They increased the taxes, investment and production goes overseas. Now they're turning the corner on this, and they're working to reduce their taxes. Madam President, I think there is clearly a better way here. The other side of the aisle has refused to even consider amendments that will increase federal oil and gas production, create good jobs in this country, generate billions of dollars of federal revenues at a time that we desperately need them, restrain, if not reduce gasoline prices, and increase our domestic energy security. We believe very strongly that the solution to these many problems should be a reasonable combination of increased domestic production, for which we have huge, world-class, untapped resources which are still locked up by our federal government. America could be the world's largest oil producer, and we could be independent of OPEC. That is real, Madam President. That is achievable, but we've got to set our mind to it. We've got to make that happen, and we've got to have the federal government get out of the way or help us with the right incentives to do so. The hundreds of billions of dollars in federal revenues from increased production could and should help support the research and the development of our renewable resources, our alternative energy, as well as efficiency and conservation. We know that building out the energy of the future, renewables, alternatives, this is expensive. How are we going to fund it? Well, many of us believe that resources that come from expanded production could help us with that. And yet, what we're presented with today is a bill that does nothing more than raise taxes, raise taxes on an industry that has created good jobs, is providing us with a resource that we need. We're not even allowed to offer a single amendment to produce one additional drop of American oil. I think that's unfortunate, Madam President. I wish that it was otherwise, but I do think the debate, the discussion that we have had on this floor in the past couple days has been good and helpful in helping to educate the American public in terms of what we truly have as a nation, in terms of our capacity and our capability to produce if given the opportunity. And with that, Madam President, I yield the floor.